NAD Electronics, part of the Canadian Lenbrook Group that manufactures premium amplifiers, receivers, cinema processors, vinyl players, and other music equipment. The history of the company NAD began in 1972 in London, when electrical engineer and doctor of physics Martin L. Borish led a group of already well-experienced engineers and entrepreneurs who wanted to create a hi-fi company or a group of companies of a new era. The idea was to provide the consumer with an affordable audio product that guaranteed hi-fi sound and had a somewhat unusual simplified design. The focus was on quality components and well-thought-out circuitry, but at the same time the budding partners wanted to save money on finishing and additional dubious features that were rarely useful to hardware enthusiasts. The beginning was made when they met in Munich, Germany, to discuss the concept and to sell such equipment on the markets of Germany, Italy, France, Switzerland, and Great Britain. At that important meeting, the business community discussed the possibility of creating a new joint brand called New Acoustic Dimension, or NAD for short. The group of distributors also included the same Martin Borish, who was full of new ideas and represented a reputable American company, Acoustic Research, specializing in the manufacture of acoustic systems of hi-fi class. American Martin Borish was a native of New Jersey, USA. He was born in 1927, and from his youth he was engaged in the family business related to medicine, which had to do with the eyes, vision, and visual perception. However, a great love of music drove Borish to the idea of selling retail hi-fi components, which were rapidly gaining popularity. Borish decided for himself that he would deal with customers' ears, not their eyes. To be successful in the new business, he needed the right education. So Martin started studying at Rutgers University and eventually earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. In 1956, in New Brunswick, New Jersey, Borish opened his own shop, Hi-Fi Haven. Business was quite successful, but over time Martin found that he was more interested in developing new models of hi-fi components and loudspeakers than in selling them. Eventually, the desire to create and improve audio technology led Martin to Boston, where he joined Acoustic Research and worked alongside hi-fi pioneers such as Henry Kloss and Edgar Wiltshire. Thanks to his good instincts, the young engineer was able to predict the future of consumer audio equipment. Borish was convinced that consumers wanted equipment that would look good in their homes and not take up too much space. Borish knew that music lovers didn't want complex, bulky audio systems with enclosures made of the most expensive materials. On the contrary, the young engineer was convinced that people wanted simplified components that could be easily mounted on a rack or placed in a cabinet. During his 10 years at Acoustic Research, Martin rose through the ranks to become president and CEO of the company. It was his contacts with distributors and dealers in America and beyond that led Martin to co-found the new NAD brand. By the early 70s, lovers of quality sound were divided into two camps. One was the demanding connoisseurs of classical music, who favored expensive, high-end audio components that maximized sound similarity with concert performances of classical music. However, with the musical revolution of the 60s, the rise of rock music and the advent of vinyl long-play records, a new generation of young fans came on the scene who needed quality sound but couldn't afford an expensive system. In those years, among the cheap mass-market audio products on the market, there were mostly low-grade products that could not meet the growing demand. It was the task of Martin and his team to fix this. The founders of NAD decided to simplify the overloaded audio components, leaving only the essentials. Thus, the choice was made to simplify the product design, while maintaining high sound quality. The first NAD models were developed by an international team of American, European, and Japanese engineers. Models under the new Acoustic Dimension brand appeared in the mid-70s. They were integrated transistor stereo amplifiers NAD 60 with power of 35 watts per channel at 8 ohm, NAD 90 with power of 55 watts and NAD 200 with power of 100 watts. It is interesting that the first NAD products, despite the main idea of the company, did not yet have minimalism in design and looked quite similar to their competitors. All the units had a specially treated silver metal front panel, and were characterized by an abundance of controls on the front and the presence of characteristic backlit arrow indicators. In addition to amplifiers, 3 receivers, 1 cassette deck and a NAD 100 tuner were introduced in '75. The company's first catalog even included 4 types of headphones, including the NAD20 with electrostatic radiators and the RP18 with magnetoplanar technology. NAD products received good reviews in the press, as well as the approval of lovers of quality sound. As a result, the young company was able to attract new investors, allowing the brand to develop further. From the first days of its existence, New Acoustic Dimension planned to manufacture its equipment in countries with cheaper labor to reduce production costs and, consequently, the final price for the consumer. NAD's headquarters and development center were in the UK, but the products were manufactured in Japan at Foster's factories. By 1976, Martin Borish had become so enthusiastic about the possibilities and potential of the new company that he even resigned as president of Acoustic Research to open a new NAD headquarters in London. Martin's plan when he took over as CEO of NAD was to create an affordable, high-quality stereo amplifier that would put the company at the forefront of low-cost hi-fi components. In this way, Borish hoped to get carte blanche in the budget sector of hi-fi electronics. However, the development of such a device required a major breakthrough, which could not be realized by everyone. And that person was found. The person was Bjorn Edwardson, a young Norwegian audio engineer educated at the University of Edinburgh who had worked for Dolby Laboratories, ITT, and Acoustic Research. At NAD, Edwardson was appointed technical director. At the same time, NAD entered into negotiations with Hewlett Electronic to manufacture its products in Taiwan, which would further reduce costs by using cheaper labor. A British team of enthusiastic engineers, led by Edwardson, got to work experimenting and improving the electronics and testing new circuits and configurations. Edwardson was exploring new ways to combine and configure transistors, improve wiring, and create other breakthrough technologies. As a result, at the end of 1977, the second series of audio components appeared in the company's production program, which were sold mainly in specialized shops selling high-end components and wishing to obtain a quality product capable of competing with the products of Japanese companies dominating the budget sector. The new NAD range included the 3030, 3045, 3060 and 3080 integrated amplifiers. The last digits in the markings indicated power into 8 ohms, except for the 3080, which delivered 90 watts per channel. The series also included 2 new tuners, 4030 and 4080, and 4 receivers, led by the NAD 7080, which delivered 90 watts per channel into 8 ohms. It was with this series that New Acoustic Dimension made it a rule to state the real and even lowered power output figures of its amplifiers or receivers. This honest approach was in contrast to the Japanese manufacturers who tended to overstate the performance of their products. NAD introduced its own term for power measurement and labeling, full disclosure power, FDP. The FDP principle is more objective than the FTC, US Federal Trade Commission, approved power rating, which measures only with an 8-ohm load, a minimum number of channels, a frequency of 1 kHz and no indication of distortion. The NAD 3080 was therefore positioned as the world's first amplifier to be rated even at 2 ohms. Most amplifiers of those years could not offer the ability to operate at this load. Nevertheless, the critical response to the new range was mixed, with both positive and not so positive articles. In their quest to create the perfect dream product, the engineers at NAD rejected the idea of using the standard lab testing equipment that was common at the time. Instead, they set out to design amplifiers that could truly drive real-world loudspeakers. This shift in thinking led to the creation of a model that was not only cheaper but also sounded better than its competitors, and it was manufactured in Asia. We're talking about the NAD 3020 stereo amplifier, which made its debut at the CES show in 1978. This unit marked the beginning of a new chapter for the company and went on to become one of the most iconic components in hi-fi history. The model's biggest strength was its outstanding sound quality at a relatively low price. At launch, the NAD 3020 cost just £80 or $135, a very reasonable sum for the time. Yet the amplifier also offered a number of advantages that set it apart from similarly priced gear in its class. One of the key ones was its ability to work with practically any loudspeakers, even those with impedance dropping as low as 2 ohms. The amplifier delivered just 20 watts per channel into 8 ohms, but these were honest watts. More importantly, the NAD 3020 was capable of handling high short-term loads, a crucial characteristic for real-world performance. Peak output reached 40 watts into 8 ohms, 58 watts into 4 ohms, and up to 72 watts into 2 ohms. It also featured a defeatable soft clipping circuit, designed to prevent high-level distorted signals from reaching the tweeters, effectively protecting them from overload and potential damage. This technology smoothed out signal peaks at high volume levels, reducing harsh distortion and keeping the sound clean under pressure. In practice, this meant owners could throw a loud party without worrying about blowing their speakers' tweeters with clipped signals. The preamp and power amp sections were linked via external jumpers, allowing the NAD 3020 to function either as a preamp or a power amp. The unit came equipped with 4 inputs: auxiliary, tuner, tape, and phono, the latter providing a built-in phono stage for connecting turntables. The amplifier also included a recording output, a headphone socket, tone and balance controls, and a loudness button, allowing bass and treble levels to remain balanced during low-volume listening. Under the hood, it used robust 2N3055 MJ2955 output transistors, the same models other manufacturers typically reserved for their more powerful 60-watt amps. It was backed by a well-engineered power supply capable of delivering high current, contributing to the 3020's impressive real-world performance. Visually, the NAD 3020 had a very minimalist design and was available in just 2 color options. NAD became known for pulling off eye-catching demonstrations at trade shows. At the Consumer Electronics Show in the US, for example, the 3020 was hooked up to a bank of loudspeakers, 4 pairs in total, with a combined impedance of just 1.1 ohms. At a show in London, the amp was driving a pair of Lin isobaric speakers, known for being an exceptionally difficult load for any amplifier. In the end, the NAD 3020 became a true bestseller and a cult classic. According to official figures, around 500,000 units were sold in the first 3 years alone, with total sales eventually reaching approximately 1.1 million, not including the various modified versions. In 2002, the NAD 3020 was ranked 19th on Stereophile's list of the top 100 audiophile products, the Hot 100 products. Following the original 3020, NAD released the 3020A, featuring several internal design improvements. This was followed by the 3020B, which came with upgraded speaker terminals, now screw-type. Later versions included the 3020E and the more audiophile-focused NAD 3120, which omitted tone and balance controls altogether. The company also introduced the NAD 7020 stereo receiver, which shared the same amplifier stage as the 3020. In fact, the 3020 became the foundation for many NAD products, making its impact on both the brand and the wider hi-fi industry hard to overstate. Thanks to the success of the 3020, NAD gained the financial means to invest in further innovation. In 1980, the company introduced the NAD 3140 amplifier, which featured 2 separate power transformers. It also offered a speaker EQ, or bass EQ, function to enhance low-frequency performance. Then, in 1981, NAD released the world's first cassette deck to support the Dolby C noise reduction system. In 1984, NAD launched its first CD player, the NAD 5100. A year later, in 1985, the company introduced its power envelope technology, later known as PowerDrive, which debuted in the NAD 2200 power amplifier. This innovation used a dual power supply design connected to the amplifier's output stage. One of the power rails carried a higher voltage and was automatically engaged only when the output signal exceeded a certain threshold. This approach reduced the strain on the output transistors, lowered their power dissipation, and helped minimize heat generation. In other words, PowerDrive ensures explosive dynamics and firm control over any loudspeakers, including those with low and unstable impedance. In 1987, The NAD 6220 cassette deck earned a top spot in the Cassette Deck of the Year category, awarded by the respected British magazine What Hi-Fi. In 1991, NAD was acquired by Danish distributor AudioNord, remaining under its ownership until 1999, a period that proved beneficial for the brand. During this time, NAD introduced its link system, allowing multiple components to be controlled via a single remote, as well as the NAD 502 CD player and the award-winning 302 and 304 integrated amplifiers. However, AudioNord continued to focus on stereo gear while the market trends were shifting towards home cinema and multi-channel surround sound, pushing stereo systems into the background. This approach threatened the company's development. At least, the failure to follow trends led to the downfall of many other well-known brands and their owners. Fortunately, AudioNord's management decided to avoid risky moves, and in 1998, NAD launched a line of AV receivers for home cinema, along with its EARS, Enhanced Ambience Recovery System, technology, which allowed stereo recordings to be played in multi-channel mode without introducing artifacts. However, in May 1999, NAD was sold to the Canadian Lenbrook Group, essentially for its own good. At the close of the 90s, NAD released the flagship S300 integrated amplifier from the legendary Silver series. It became highly popular among audiophiles. Weighing 26 kilograms, the amplifier featured a balanced dual mono design with no negative feedback, delivering 100 watts per channel with ultra-low distortion. It used Sanken transistors, 8 Nichikan buffer capacitors and 2 high-current Holmgren toroidal transformers, each powering a separate channel. Lenbrook's management fully understood the immense experience behind Martin Borish and Bjorn Edwardson. They also recognized the era of change had arrived, but they didn't want to turn NAD into a home cinema brand. Instead, Lenbrook aimed to quickly navigate through the trend phase and return NAD to its roots as a serious hi-fi company. With strong financial backing, NAD was forced to shift its focus in the early 2000s, continuing to produce AV receivers, DVD players, and play catch-up with market leaders who had already recognized the upcoming changes in the 90s. Only in 2003 did NAD firmly establish itself in this new sector, launching a range of 5, 6, and 7-channel AV receivers. In the early 2000s, then president of NAD, Robert Brown, hinted at a surprise for audiophiles. He promised that those who had become captivated by the new trend of home theater receivers would soon crave a surprise from NAD, one dedicated entirely to audio, not video. The surprise came in 2005 with the launch of the flagship Master series, developed under the guidance of longtime engineer Bjorn Edwardson. The power supplies featured custom-made Holmgren toroidal transformers, and the cases were equipped with wave-shaped cooling fins, crafted from thick, high-quality steel. The series included both stereo and multi-channel components, designed primarily for music, not cinema. The Master's M3 amplifier featured a fully isolated control and management system, processor, 3-line display, regulator chips, and input switcher, mounted on separate boards and powered by an independent transformer. The massive chassis had a thick front panel, large side heat sinks, and steel sheets, 2 mm thick, attached to the top and bottom. The chassis incorporated vibration damping materials, and high-quality gold-plated binding posts and RCA connectors were supplied by WBT. The circuit design followed a dual mono topology, with a separate Holmgren toroidal transformer and 2 capacitors for each channel. The preamp section used field effect transistors and individual Class A driver blocks, while the output stage featured pairs of powerful bipolar transistors capable of delivering 50 amperes of current to the load. In 2007, NAD released the Viso series, which included multifunctional electronics with unique designs as well as speaker systems. In 2009, NAD introduced the M2 amplifier. This model from the top-tier Masters series represented a completely new approach to amplifier design, featuring direct digital technology. NAD became one of the first companies to explore alternative amplification types, opting for Class D. The development of this concept took about 5 years. The amplifier was developed by NAD's technical expert, Gregory Stidson, and Craig Bell from Diode Zetex, a UK-based semiconductor company. Direct Digital Technology used two specialized chips, ZXCZM800, digital modulator, and ZXCZA200, analog feedback processor, which converted the incoming PCM signal into a PWM signal that controlled powerful output field effect transistors. The NAD M2 did not use analog circuitry in its signal path, even the volume control was managed by a processor. This technology allowed the amplifier to maintain minimal noise levels at any volume, delivering 250 watts per channel and an incredibly high damping factor of 2000 units. These specifications were independent of the impedance of the connected speakers, as the load was monitored by the processor, which compared the PWM output signal with a reference and constantly corrected any errors. The amplifier was equipped with a range of digital inputs, including a balanced AES input. It also featured analog XLR and RCA inputs. 4 analog connections. The NAD M2 used an analog-to-digital converter, ADC. The power supply featured 3 power transformers, and the circuitry was based on a dual mono configuration. In the second half of the 2000s, the Classic series, which traced its roots back to the famous 3020 model, saw the introduction of amplifiers bearing the BEE abbreviation. This stood for the initials of Bjorn Erik Edwardson, indicating that he had made modifications to these models to enhance sound quality. At the end of the first decade of the new century, NAD introduced the concept of modular design construction, MDC, which allowed for upgrades and changes to the architecture of previously purchased components through built-in modules. In 2012, the budget-friendly Class D amplifier NAD D3020 was released to celebrate the company's 40th anniversary, bearing the same digital index as the iconic 3020. In July 2017, Martin Borish passed away at the age of 89. And in December 2018, Bjorn Erik Edwardson also passed away. These days, the central place in the NAD catalogue is taken by the Masters series, which includes top components, amplifiers, AV processors, DACs, digital preamplifiers, and other models. A number of devices are based on the BlueOS platform. This is a proprietary operating system for music streaming and multi-room control. It was developed by Lenbrook. With BlueOS you can stream music from Tidal, Spotify, Qobuz, local NAS or internet radio. Everything is controlled through the proprietary BlueOS app. It also allows you to combine NAD and BlueSound brand devices into a single multi-room network and listen to high-res music synchronously in different rooms. A little lower down the hierarchy is the Classic series. These are well-recognized integrated amplifiers and receivers with classic NAD design. The custom install range is also presented. It is oriented to installation projects and multi-room, and includes multi-channel amplifiers and streamers that can be easily integrated into automation systems. Notable models include the NAD C389 integrated amplifier, built on a hybrid UCD digital architecture with an ESS DAC and upgradability through MDC2 modules. The C3050LE, released in honor of the brand's 50th anniversary, combines vintage design with modern features, BlueOS, Dirac Live, HDMI EARC and more. Also they offer the current version of the popular D3020V2 compact amplifier, designed for desktop and small stereo systems, with Bluetooth aptX HD support and a turntable input. NAD also offers turntables. The C588 is an audiophile turntable with belt drive, carbon fiber tone arm and Autophon 2M red head already installed. It is positioned as an ideal complement to NAD stereo systems, especially the Classic range. Today, NAD is still owned by the Canadian company Lenbrook Group. It's an independent holding that also owns the BlueSound and PSB speakers brands. NAD holds a solid position in the audio industry as a manufacturer of high-quality hi-fi gear and is considered one of the most respected names in the mid to upper segment of the market. Now for the most important part. You have watched the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a like, subscribe, write a comment. Only your help will allow the channel to grow. A lot of interesting things are on the way. Take a couple of seconds to press the right buttons. Thank you all and see you next episode.